Let's go. Marina, welcome. So minutes. Anybody have any? I've got one question which came up when I was sending out the schedule for the year. I put in a February and a March meeting, and Betsy seems to remember that we had canceled the March meeting. Does anybody else have any recollection of that? She's going to take over the February meeting.
Yeah, well, we talked about her doing 2 meetings.
She's under the impression that she's only going to do one, but I mean,
Well, I think that
I just
she's
don't
under the
remember.
wrong impression.
Should we leave it as is, and I'll just tell her?
Yeah.
So if you want to cancel in March, that's fine too. So, all right. So I'll take care of that. So we'll leave it. Any other questions? That was my only question. Leave as is.
So you want a motion to approve?
Yeah, that's approved.
So I move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Okay. So now, on the agenda, communications.
Could we have a copy of the minutes down here?
Oh, you
Sure,
have
we'll give them back.
some minutes? That's minutes.
Minutes.
I did have a copy of Vern's letter to put into the minutes. I don't seem to know where it went. You have a copy?
Yeah.
Okay. So, has everybody read it?
Yeah, Zephyr, yeah.
Anybody not read it? Do we need to read it?
Well, I think it's helpful to read it for those people who are reviewing this meeting on the tape, and it's short.
Oh, here it is. YouTube review, titled, subject, YouTube review. Dear Todd, after seeing the video of the Tuesday night meeting, I feel compelled to comment on the behavior of several committee members with regard to Joanne's comments, questions, and appropriate observations. Joanne seemed to me to be the only member with foresight and clarity. The treatment and attitude towards her was insulting and demeaning, not to mention painful. She seemed the only member who understood the inconsistency and inconclusive responses to questions posed to the 2 business reps. They did not know answers, could not answer you when asked about replacement and repair costs of systems. They referenced towns with systems to review: Vernon, Madison, ECT, ETC, okay. Having absolutely nothing in common with the small village of West Cornwall. I hope you have time to review the meeting via YouTube and offer an apology to Joanne. Vern Henschel. Okay.
Thank
But
you.
this is interesting. I mean, this whole thing about videotaping meetings and brings to, it's like it's a whole new area. What are the consequences of video, seeing things on video, and what's the role of that in governing? Who knows?
Ask an expert.
Do you feel that you
FOI.
deserve an apology?
I don't need an apology.
Did you hear that?
I said I don't need an apology.
You don't need an apology.
Yeah, I think we've always valued her input, but, for the years that she's been here doing this, and she's had many insightful insights. That's not right.
Fine. I would like to offer a thought this evening. We have public comment, and we have a large contingent of people who've shown up. I think when we put public comment at the end, we deprive ourselves of the ability to discuss what they're going to bring up during our meeting. I'm not suggesting we have a long discussion, but I think it would be helpful to this committee to know what the issues have brought people out on such a nasty night, so that we could address them during our meeting and not at the very end.
Yeah, the whole issue of public comment, where it belongs on an agenda is very unclear to me. I think that the ability of the community to stay in touch with what we're doing is very important, and we're always accessible, certainly by email. And if there are issues that are of great importance, and you'd like to have added to the agenda, that would certainly be something that we could consider. But to just have public comment at the front and then kind of deal with whatever may come along in an unanticipated fashion could make it very complicated to get stuff done, so.
And we also have an agenda that we need to follow, so can't get skewed off from that. I don't know.
Well, we can add anything we want to the agenda, or as they very often do at Board of Selectmen meetings, when Gordon sees someone who's there and knows it's a specific issue, he will move that item to a different place on the agenda. It's done anytime. I'm just suggesting that we be
Well, that's,
respectful of public comment and not just put it right, public comment and then we adjourn.
right. Well, I mean, I think that would be a fix of a kind. If somebody wanted something to get on the agenda that didn't show up, perhaps they could take somebody aside and say, could you get this on the agenda? And then we'd address it in that fashion.
How do you want to proceed, Todd? It's up to you.
Well, I feel that it's in the right spot at the end, at the moment.
Okay. Well,
But I do also feel that if there are issues that do have a bearing on the work that we're doing, they should find their way onto the agenda. And that's as
I
much as
just
I would
wanted to
say.
make one comment, and I think this applies to some of Vern's concerns about Joanne. We're at this point in this whole process where there are not clear answers to lots and lots of very pressing questions that people have. We don't have a firm idea about design or location, and it's frustrating for people who have a lot of questions and want to hear some answers. I'm not defending these guys we had at the last meeting, but, without any specific design and so on, it seemed to me it was a little hard for them to respond to questions about operations costs and so on. That, these are things that are just going to emerge over time, and it is taking a long time. And that is frustrating, but it's just the way it's got to be.
Yeah, and I find it incredibly frustrating that McDonald isn't here tonight. After this is the night he was going to definitely show up after months of definitely going to have data for us. So I presume he's given it all to Gordon, so we'll get it later.
That's, not entirely the way it was left, though, at last meeting. He indicated that it wouldn't be ready till the end of the year. I mean, we gave him a 12/31 deadline, if I recall. So we weren't going to see him this meeting.
And he sent you a report.
Not a report, he just sent me, we had a little exchange, which I forwarded to you, well, I didn't forward it, I quoted it to you guys, and it's just, do you want me to read it? Do you remember, did you all see it in the email?
I read it.
Isn't that under your agenda item too?
Yeah, let's get on the agenda and see.
Okay, we can deal with it there too, but it's actually, all right, so moving along. Housekeeping reviews. So, due to the fact that Steve isn't here and we don't have any specific numbers at the moment, and we have a somewhat loose agenda, I thought it would be a good time to just talk a little bit about the mission that we were charged with in the beginning. It needs a little work, I believe, the selectmen. I mean, not a lot of work, but This one says, to examine with assistance from Goman and York Group, who are long gone, and Torrington Area Health District, the current limitations of the water septic systems in the village of West Cornwall. Also to advise the Board of Selectmen and the town on practical improvement alternatives and the procedures to implement these possible alternatives. So what I would like the selectmen to do, if you can, I know it's a little bit extra work for you guys and gals, is revisit this mission for us now that we're at this stage or moving towards a new stage, and maybe give us a little more specificity about from here forward, could be, because we've examined the current limitations of the water septic system. That's behind us. And in terms of advise on practical improvement alternatives, we're pretty much there. And then we're moving towards the implementation, perhaps, once there's a town vote.
Todd, aren't we going to
Yeah.
get 2 estimates from WMC? One to dump into the river, and one, which we know would be more expensive, to go to a location to be determined, the same as to be determined where the other site would be, that would be underground, so we could compare long-range costs? Because now that we know, we're looking at a cost now estimate of $6,000 per month over, you know, a 10-year period. We're talking about $1 million difference.
I'm
If
sorry,
we-
I've lost the thread of
Well,
what
if
you're
if we're
saying.
looking at O&M costs, I think we should have O&M costs for this system, which we now have an initial estimate of $6,000 a month, plus electricity to run it, plus sludge removal, plus ongoing maintenance costs. What would the O&M be if we had a system that might cost more initially? We realize that if we went to an underground system, but what would be the O&M costs on that versus the other? And I'm just saying that we need to realize that, you know, this system is going to last 60 years or so, and a 10 years, you would way more than go over $1 million in cost. So if it costs $2 million more initially, you'd still be saving millions of dollars over the long term if O&M costs, you know.
I'm not sure if that, we're not putting the cart before the horse, and we have to wait till he comes in and do it with his report, and we don't.
His report of
We're
what?
waiting for this report and for this application to get put in. And you know, after the application gets in, sometimes, some months will pass and we'll finally know what a contribution from the federal government will be.
Yeah, but I
then-
just asked for the,
But-
I've asked initially for 2 estimates. One for, you know, dumping it into the river, and one for an underground system.
But Joanne, every time the subject comes up, the answer's the same,
What?
which is that he has not identified a landmass large enough to do this
No.
The
project.
septic field, you mean?
Yeah, to do
I
the...
believe what he said is that it would take more money to go there.
No, he said there isn't the available land. That's my, I mean, Steve isn't here, so he obviously can't answer, but does anybody have a different recollection of what he has said to that specific question?
We did have sort of, on that point a little bit
Yeah.
though, we did, that was like a sort of a bone of contention on one of the meetings, because the previous meeting we had talked about the vote for 2 sites, and it was confusing, but we did say that we would.
Right,
one
so
for
the
land. I
second
don't know
site,
where.
yeah, the second site was
Yeah.
going to be away from the river, not, the
Right.
closest, the cheapest is closest to the river for the,
Right.
for the,
For the initial capital expenditure.
Well, with the
But
cheap-
now that we know O&M for that,
right,
we
right,
should
but the
compare
two
that.
sites were
Yeah.
going to be, both were going to be disposed into the river. The second site wasn't going to be a land disposal site.
Yeah, I thought that was off the table too.
Yeah, he has said, there's no place.
It was a question of where the water was going to go.
Yeah, and there's not a landmass large enough to accept it,
Yeah.
for the size of, I mean, I don't think we should even get into it without him here, so we can take that up at the next meeting if you'd like. But my recollection, now, this has been addressed several times, not just once.
But he hasn't really addressed it, he's just said,
Well, that's
Yeah.
my record.
okay.
But let's see if we
Okay,
can
move
just
ahead.
stay on the mission for the moment. So, does anybody else have a feel about this? For me, it's very important that I know why I'm coming here once a month and what we're trying to accomplish. And I want to make sure we're not just spinning our wheels, that each time we sit here, we take a step towards where we're headed. At the moment, we're headed towards getting some numbers, finding out what the USDA is going to be able to offer us, getting that to the Board of Finance, and then having them generate a per household or per taxpayer number for us so that we can create some kind of a vote and find out whether the town is going to continue to support this. Then once we know whether if the town says, yeah, we're going to support this, then we move to the next step, which
Yeah.
is support.
Well, you've got a lot of moving parts to what you just said about getting a number to the Board of Finance.
Right.
First of all, there's the capital number related to the bond issue, what that would cost over a certain number of years. That probably is fairly easy to figure out. But what
Barbara
Joanne said-
generated that page of,
Yeah, and, but the operation and management
right.
things are an issue, and I'm not sure.
Well, I would assume that Board of
Yeah.
Finance will make sure of those numbers too, right?
Yeah, we can. However, I'm not clear that we have actually addressed the issue of user fees, because I've read a couple of things that have come across my bow about users paying these costs, which in our case is pretty impossible, let's face it. O&M cost per year, you're hooked up, you pay. And I think that's an issue that is really going to be the hot one.
But is that
Yeah.
that's a Board of Finance issue? That's not something we're
No, I
going to...
think that Gordon, forgive me, but I suspect Gordon and the select people have got to make a decision that the entire town will be involved in the operation. and
Right, but once
management
again, that's not
costs.
something that
Yeah.
we dig
No,
into
you-
in this
well,
committee.
Let's
No,
take
we
a
make
second.
recommendations, I guess, couldn't we? I don't know.
Are you assuming that with what you said, that we've agreed on the siting?
No, citing is
A separate issue.
That's a
totally
whole-
separate. The way it's going to work, from my understanding, is that we're getting a number as to what this is going to cost to do, the cheapest way we can do this. And then we submit an application to the USDA with those numbers. And they review. You correct me, Gordon, if I'm way out of bounds here. They're going to review it and tell us what percentage of that nut they'll help finance. So whatever they won't help finance
We
is
have
Cornwall's
bond,
number,
Yeah, right.
at least for the capital percent portion of it. And then, as you say, the O&M portion of it has to play into it.
Yeah, and that's
what
where
the
we
Board
get
of
into
Finance-
the thing, And I just think we need to be as open as we can be about entertaining all the options connected with who's paying for operations and management.
Well, maybe we should be studying what other
Yeah, sure.
installations
That's a
like
good
this, how
idea.
they're
Yeah.
managed.
Because,
Paid
the
for.
issue becomes, this serves such a small section of town, and I don't live there. That's the first sort of part of it. But then there comes these arguments, and Joanna's been very evocative about this, that West Cornwall's health and future is the town's health and future. And I think there's a terrific argument to be made for that. So who works up that language in the end? I guess it's a Board of Selectmen's decision, but we could make recommendations about that. And sticking numbers on that is almost the last part of it.
Well, let me tell you what I bumped into in my research about this specific question. So if we were applying for state monies to do this project, they no longer grant monies to towns that aren't funded by, solely funded by the users of the system. Fortunately, we found that the USDA doesn't have that stipulation. So the only way this project can move forward is in some kind of a partnership, users and the town, and whatever percentage that ends up, clearly it would be larger for the town in the beginning because there are virtually no users at this point in West Cornwall. As the project matures and there are more and more users, things would flip, but those are things that I would assume the Board of Finance is going to have to work out.
Yeah, there was some language that comes out of the 70s and 80s that I always liked, was the public-private partnership
Right.
idea. You know, and I like the way that sounds and
Well,
works, you know, and that's perhaps what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's the only way this kind of a thing could possibly work, so.
Lisa,
Anyway,
you
as far as
pointed-
the.
You know, as Lisa pointed out, I have been a big advocate for
Right.
doing the project and having participation across the town, which I know a lot of other people don't like. But because I've been such a strong advocate for that, I feel a real responsibility to put the best and most financially responsible option forward.
Sure.
And that's why. And Donnie just found something in the minutes. Would you please read it?
This is from September 10th, and it says, let's see, Joanne made the motion that Steve McDonald identified 2 possible sites. I seconded it. All were in favor. While this is going on, we can continue the process of the USDA applications, but we did vote, Steve is going to get us 2 sites, but are both on the river. Is that
Right,
it?
so.
Because that's the question I
Right,
was
both sites were going to be disposed into the river sites. The second site wasn't going to be a disposed underground site. They weren't, do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the hope is
Wasn't
that
clear.
the numbers that he works up will be suitable for either the cheapest of the sites, meaning the closest to the river, or perhaps with a little bit of extra money, we can get it to a further away from the river site, or a more acceptable site, whatever that may mean when the time comes to choose a site. But we don't have a site at the moment.
No.
We only
Well,
have an
that's-
idea.
That's why I don't think your interpretation of that paragraph makes any sense.
But we
because
do
it
know
only-
that the cheapest site is closest to the river. That much we
The
know.
capital expenditure
Yeah.
may be cheapest.
Yeah.
But O&M over the
Well, as I
50 or
said, when Steve,
60-year life.
next meeting, when he's here and we can ask an expert on this, we'll,
We've been
Well,
asking this expert
run
since
that
we
by.
approved the other. Gordon, the other night in the Board of Selectmen, when you reviewed the budget with everyone, you went through the budget lines with your two
Right.
select people. And one of the lines you referred to was the West Cornwall Septic, and you said
Right.
there's money in this line. I was wondering how much that was. You didn't say on the
There's
video.
money in the line, I don't remember what it is, but the reason why there's money on the sheet paper we're looking at was because the grant that we used to hire Steve in his initial study ultimately went through the COG in their books. It did not go through the town's expenditure books, so there shows a balance that has already been spent on our books. So there is, in a practical sense, the remainder of the $10,000 to get this application done at this point. And there may be a couple $1,000s beyond that, but there's not major money left over that has been approved through the regular process.
So it's just an accounting
Correct.
notation.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
I can just follow up. To Todd's thought, I mean, the selectmen can put it on their next agenda or meeting afterwards. I think if you step back, because we're at the year end, the peanut moved quite a bit in this last year, if you think of where we started, uncertainty. I think that there's been quite a bit of focus on the process. We've all learned quite a bit about the technology, the financial part of it. And we have a procedure ahead of us as far as how that's going to play out with basically the big event's going to be a town meeting in the spring. Once the USDA gives us some numbers, then we can work on the financial part. I did talk to Steve about looking at some alternatives, different systems and things. I think it wouldn't take him too much to do something along the lines of what Joanne is talking about. I think he said generally an in-ground system away would cost, a premium extra amount of money, which is a bit of the back of the envelope thing, but he probably could spend some time getting that as good as he can. But I also think we want to remember what we learned, and we did have John Jules here last month, who is from a separate firm, who has a lifetime full of experience, and one of his comments, which I thought was important to remember, was that you've got the river, go to the river, was what he said, that's one of the big advantages West Cornwall has, as opposed to some other places that do not have a river they can discharge into. And in the last year, most people that deal with this on a daily basis say that ultimately is a big advantage. So we can work on time frames, but I think we sort of know where we're going. We have time early in the new year to maybe look at some alternatives while we're waiting for USDA to get back, and look at some other towns.
Well,
and then I think the financial thing, as Lisa said, is pretty straightforward. We will have to talk about user fees and make some assumption. That's probably
well,
a fairly...
you keep saying does that mean this committee, or?
Well, I think...
Because
I think it's a joint...
We don't have experts here, we don't have time, we don't have numbers. That's why I'm looking for a new mission statement for us. Tell us what you want us to accomplish as a group. And that would be really helpful, okay?
Shall we recommend to you, the selectmen,
Recommend.
a plan of action that would include, what we think about having talked with, members of the public and made a genuine effort to get out into the community and get people's ideas, what's going to fly.
Eventually the
Well-
selectmen are going to have to call a town meeting and decide on the language, as we did last
Right.
time. And then that goes to the Board of Finance,
Right.
and they approve it before it can even go to a town meeting. But ultimately, that's we have to be satisfied with the...
But finance has to come up with the numbers. We can't come up with the numbers.
Right, no, I don't expect...
So we need
Right.
some numbers
Yeah.
before you
No,
go
there'll
to a
be a
town
whole
meeting.
setup worked up, with the
Right.
USDA portion loan, the outright grant.
And we have financial
Yeah.
people that we have to consult
Mhm.
before we borrow. So I
Right.
wouldn't worry about that being something this committee does, but we
No,
can...
no, I'm not
we can
worried
work on
about it. I'm
something.
just looking for some
We can work... give you-
direction. I don't want to just come here and just
Right.
hash over the same old stuff, and we got to keep moving forward. So my request is to get the selectmen
An
to
update.
give us a
Yeah.
more specific mission, or update, give us a renewed
Maybe we can
mission.
work on that.
So please do that. That would be great.
One person who will help a great deal with sorting out the financing is the bond attorney, bond counsel, who we've worked with for decades, who knows the town very well.
Yeah. Did Barbara work this up
And Barbara,
for that meeting?
I don't know whether I have a copy.
So the numbers are starting to get,
Inch up
Yeah, but
with.
one thing I do know
In
is that the
focus.
bond counsel can't get to work on anything at all until he has a town vote to proceed with an amount of money and a description of all this distribution of players in the financing.
okay.
So,
And then another, just housekeeping before we move along. Is everybody intending to stay on the board? Betsy will stay, and she'll continue to be the chair.
Good.
Priscilla will stay. Everybody
I'll
else
stay.
going to continue?
I want to give up secretary if I can.
You want to give it up?
Yes.
Oh, you did a great job, too. You and Joanne both. I don't know how we're going to replace. Anybody else can do that job, or? No?
I think too much of that.
I don't know how I mean, at some point, it's going to be video. That's all, because a lot
It's
of
always
these.
video.
Yeah, a lot of these committees can't get
Was
minutes,
that- was
and they're
that-
so important.
Was that agreed then with Gordon that you guys are going to look at how we're supposed to proceed then?
Yeah,
Is
he
that-
said
okay.
he's willing to take that task on. Select.
So I think, Todd, one of the things we definitely should move forward with, I mean, you need the expertise of the bond council and all of that, but I think the thing that impacts the townwide is whether or not we will endorse the creation of a separate taxing district so that O&M costs become the responsibility of
Gordon has
users and not an ongoing.
Gordon has mentioned that as organizational work to be done as we move towards a town meeting. So I'm assuming that in the new mission statement, that'll be something he addresses, those kinds of issues. So
Yeah, I don't understand the advantages of one over the other. I tried to bring that up last time.
Well, that means the people who use it pay versus the whole town
Yeah,
paying.
well, yeah, I guess.
I mean, that's the bottom line.
So, and we should just have a vote as whether or not I remain the chair, just because it's the end of the year, and I mean, does somebody else want to take it over, or?
I vote yes.
I'll continue if that's all okay. Okay. So, do we need a vote on that, or just a?
You know, you got the short straw, Todd.
I took it, yeah.
Doing a good job.
All right.
Doing
So
no other stuff.
now, the application to USDA review, timeline in progress. I have circulated what Steve said. He's on schedule. He'll have numbers for us by the next meeting. I'm assuming the application will have been submitted. And
So we'll get it after he submits it?
Gordon, you know the answer to that?
Are you going to see it before it goes?
I hadn't thought of that I need to see it, because I think it's a fairly technical report. We've
Yeah.
seen, it's based on the work he's done to date. But
Well, why would we not see it?
Why would
You
we
want-
not see it?
Yeah. I mean,
Do you want to see it?
you know, this is
before-
what we've been waiting 6 months for. This is what the town
Well, he's asking,
okayed $10,000 for.
But you would want to see it before it got submitted, or what?
Yeah,
And to have
yeah.
Can
some
we
kind
make
of-
a useful contribution to it, would be my question, if it's all very technical.
How would I know unless I saw it?
Okay, so just from a,
How would I know unless I saw it? Unless you saw it? How could you make that judgment?
so then we would need to request that he not submit it until next meeting. So we've all had a
Right.
chance to.
I mean,
has to be
he's
done
told
by the end of
us,
the year.
he's told us that USDA is not going, it can go in early, but they look at it, all of them at the same time, which is several months out. Because you get it in early doesn't mean they look at it early. There is an open date, you know, open the request, and that's several months out.
I didn't
So we
hear
don't
that from
lose
my talk
anything.
with USDA. I think the sooner you get it in, the better,
Yeah.
has been the message from USDA.
Well, that was absolutely the opposite of what Steve said. Steve said it's nice to get it in, it's good to get it in early, but it doesn't give you any advantage in the end, because all things are considered equally when the due date closes.
I think I heard him initially say,
Oh, wait, before we get, the specific request is to see it before it gets submitted.
Yeah,
And is there, did you hear a December 31st submission date?
Yes.
Deadline? So we don't have
Well, I
that?
don't know about deadline.
no
I don't
deadline.
know
We
whose
set the
deadline.
deadline.
Okay, so we said,
Steve,
so,
yeah.
so is there a motion to get Steve not to submit this application until we've seen it? Because we need a vote on
well,
this,
can he show it to us?
because we'll have to tell
Can we
him.
do this by email?
No, you have to do it at a public meeting. You'd have to set another meeting to review it before, if you're going to take any
Well,
action.
we have a meeting scheduled for January.
Yeah, you'd have to
So
talk
we'll
about it.
use that meeting to review it. Can he circulate it before the meeting?
Yes, as long as we
Well, I
have
mean,
no
he's
discussion of
asking
it.
for-
What's that? We have
As
no
long as we have
discussion.
no discussion of it.
He's asking for a figure, I mean, the numbers in this thing are gonna be much greater than we're gonna end up looking for.
Well, we don't know that, though. That was the reason that we used the way most for that out number, in case.
Well, why don't you
God
make a
knows,
motion,
you know.
Joanne?
Okay, I just move that the
Yeah, what-
USDA application be distributed to the board members
Before it's
before it's submitted.
to the
That's all.
USDA. Okay, so do we need a second?
I second it.
Richard seconds it, okay. So now there's discussion, right? Right? Is that how this
Right,
works?
that's it.
Okay, so that, we'll ask him to email it to us in advance of the meeting, as far in advance as he can. He said it's going to be done by 12/31, right? So that gives us sort of 2 weeks to look at it before the meeting. Then we get to the meeting, we discuss, and we'll decide whether or not we're ready for him to submit this or not at that meeting. Does that sound
You know, if I
Sounds
could
reasonable.
just make a comment, my experience with these kinds of works of art, grants, whatever you want to call them, written by other people other than Cornwall people, is that the oddities that you're going to find most are in the descriptions of what the town is like, and, you know, what its purposes are and so on, that we might want to redirect some of his writing about the more general introductory stuff. But once you get into the weeds, you know, the technical stuff.
That's fine.
Yeah, yeah, that's my guess.
Yes.
I mean,
you
his,
vote.
he indicated that this final was mostly it. That it gets turned into a thing called an environmental report, which he's done already, and then
Right.
there's an engineering report, which is taken off of this to a great extent also. So beyond that, what's in the application, I don't know.
This doesn't have to be a motion.
Well, it kind of does, because somebody has to be in touch with Steve and tell him not to submit this thing.
Okay.
Hopefully he hasn't already, but, so I want to make
Well,
sure
if he
the
has
committees.
already, and we haven't even,
Say again?
I mean, Gordon, do you know if he submitted it already?
I haven't talked to him today.
Didn't we ask him to submit it?
Well, that was the
That was
plan.
the goal, was
That
to
was
get
the goal, but-
it done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
since July, right. It's been a goal every meeting to get it done. You're right, I agree 100%.
So why are we putting it off another month or another?
We're
Well,
not, we're
there's a
getting it
motion.
delivered and at the next meeting. I'm just saying it
Listen,
would
there's
be
a,
nice
there's
to
a
see.
motion for it to happen.
And Richard said.
It's been seconded, we've discussed it. Is it time to
Okay.
bring it to a vote?
Sure.
Okay, all those in favor, could you read the motion? Sorry.
That's right.
Do your best.
Joanne made the motion for the USDA application to be reviewed by the board before submitted, and Richard seconded it.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll say aye. Just because I think some of
Just
the
to keep
writing will
things
be a little
going.
goofy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a passing motion. All right, so
He has to
hopefully he
record-
hasn't
has to
submitted.
record the no votes. So were those
Oh.
no votes or abstentions?
I'm abstaining, yeah.
I'm a no.
You're a no.
Yeah, I think it was clearly asked to submit it.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 yays, 1 no, 1 abstention.
Okay.
And we have a quorum? 3, 6?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, there you go. Now,
Thank you.
all right,
And Don, write down the names
first phone call I make tomorrow
for
morning.
everybody.
Okay.
Hopefully he hasn't, I don't think he submitted it.
You only have to record nay votes, which is Ian.
All right, so, application, oh, this is part of the application timeline and progress. Is there any other discussion about this application timeline and progress? Wants to get discussed?
Sounds good.
Okay, review procedure for submission to Board of Finance. We did that a little
We
bit.
sort of talked about that already, yeah.
That's, to me, very, very cloudy. I don't see
Well,
how
it's
that
pretty,
happens.
I'll clear it up for you.
Okay.
Because it's, basically Steve's established a budget of $5 million. So
Okay,
when we went
more or
to-
less, less.
Or less,
Yeah.
hopefully it'll be less.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whatever it's 4 million, 5 million, Board of
Right.
Finance can look at the fiscal impact of those numbers
Right.
fairly quickly, as
Which
Lisa
is that,
said.
that doesn't include O and M.
Right,
Okay.
correct.
So where are they
that-
gonna get that number?
So that has to be worked out in the spring, or when we we have time to do that. But the major amount of that's going to be the capital amount.
But does the
Certainly
town
the first year.
vote on only the capital amount, or does the town vote?
We'll have
on-
to find, I don't know the answer to that. I think at this point, it would
Yeah.
vote only on the capital amount.
Because
Wouldn't
that's
it
the way-
depend on
But
how
what
we
happens if
structure
the
the
O and M
question?
portion of it was,
Right, there has to be
Wait,
someone, that has to be figured out.
does that get
Yeah.
voted on also?
I don't know at this point.
But is the figure that he's submitting to the federal government, I mean, that's not our final figure for what we're, the system.
No,
I
it's
mean-
the end of a range,
But that's the end of a range,
yeah,
but
4,995,000 or whatever.
we're
it's got.
taking a different number to the Board of Finance at some
Probably,
point.
yeah, because then we'd have,
Well,
Well, why would you take a different, where would you get a different?
Well, you
an
could say
actual
up to.
cost of the
Up to
system.
$5 million.
But we don't know where the system's going yet, so you don't know what that
Well, we
one's
can't
gonna
go to the public until we know where the system's going and we know how much it's
No,
going
you
to cost.
can go to the public without a site, but they won't give you money until the public's approved it. So will the public approve something without a site?
that seems iffy to me, I just,
No, I mean,
Yeah.
we need to get to a cost and a site, so that the public can categorically vote on something specific.
The
You
site,
can't- I
the
think
site
you-
may be the biggest issue.
Right, so perhaps
Yeah,
that's in
yeah.
our mission.
Todd, I think,
Yeah.
if I remembered correctly, I think you can say no more than 4,095,000,
because you
whatever
won't know until you
his
bid.
number, because
Right.
we won't know exactly. And that'll put a cap on it, basically.
Right, but it still
Yeah.
isn't enough numbers for to go to a town vote on.
Well, it
mean,
would
would
be
you
for
if you
the
were-
capital appropriation. Because this is coming in two parts, the capital piece, which is going to involve
You could-
USDA and us
But-
doing
so
some
you could-
bonding.
You could approve a capital thing at a town vote and then turn down the O
Well,
and M
that's not
portion of it?
likely, it doesn't mean we can't have the discussion, I would think we would talk about operation and management. You know, we'd just be as open as we can be all along as we're finding this all out. So,
But
Well, at what point do we work towards, and maybe this isn't the mission?
well, basically, the
I mean,
O and
he
M
said
vote
that-
would be on when the next budget comes up.
He said,
So you'd build something, you'd approve to build something, and then
So
turn
we'd
it
be
down?
talking about it, wouldn't we, Gordon? Sure.
Yeah, you'd have some
Department
general
not.
understanding at the
Yeah.
time you did your capital appropriation, what the arrangement would be for the O and M.
Okay, but it would be more than general, it'd be based on historical.
Right, but again, you don't know until you build it, who's gonna show
Right,
up, and there's a
right.
bunch of variables, but you'd have an upper limit of what these would cost.
Camera with the noise.
So that's,
Well,
this is
So
why
whatever,
I'm
but I think
cloudy
that's,
on it, because it's
again,
a
I don't
cloudy
think
issue.
that's,
It's a cloudy issue, and these are things that,
I think it's doable.
oh, sure, it's
Fairly
doable, but it'll be much more
There's a
doable
checklist
if
of
we
stuff that has to
clear on
Mhm.
where and what we're doing. So
Exactly, yeah.
Let's make
Yep.
sure
I'm a
that
little
that's.
confused as to, you know, I've been aware that during the time that we've been talking about this, at one point we were talking about the initial building itself was going to be as built at Salisbury was $1.4 million. And that sometime later, when he said these things are being, you know, produced at a greater rate now and at a lesser amount, that specific number came down to 450,000. I'm wondering, doesn't he have an idea exactly what the hardware that's going to be installed is going to cost at this point? I mean, that's not the number he's getting clearance from the federal government for a certain amount, but is he going to deliver us a cost of this system, something that we can take to the public to vote on?
Well, here in this environmental report, there's a loose breakdown, and.
Yeah, but that's just for the federal government, because we want to clear this amount of money, but we're not going to take that amount of money to the public, isn't it? We're going to get something, a realistic dollar value for what this thing's going to
Well,
cost.
yeah, so he needs to be here to ask these questions. I can't
Yeah.
answer.
And I don't see how you can really do that without knowing what the site is. either.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
because
then maybe
things
we
will be
have to put our
site-specific, you
finger
know.
on a site first
Yeah.
and then go.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
I thought he was coming back with two prices, one,
Yeah, so we had a choice, yeah, I guess, yeah.
So do you think but we're not going to come back with an agreement on the site right away?
Before
There's
the town
already
meeting, you mean?
disagreement on that.
We have to.
Yeah, I think we'd have to.
And
We'd have to, yeah.
What's?
Well, that may be the major
What-
portion of our work this
Yeah.
year, is to find a site if we can.
You know,
So all the numbers are gonna be dependent on
and
the site.
numbers, and, yeah, I think that's the work we could do for the selectmen, is to sort out all the issues about the site and the type of machinery that's gonna go in. And so I get a little better definition of this.
Well, the type of machinery will be the engineering portion.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so
That's
clearly,
a good point,
we
Dan,
have,
you know.
we have to get more clarity on
I mean, if
what
we
the
want
Board
to
of
take this thing
Finance is
forward,
gonna need.
I mean, I get the grant thing is one thing, but we still want to push this project forward to the point where it can't, 4 or 5 months from now, we can get a vote,
Mhm.
up or down.
Right. I was under the impression that this thing was gonna go forward without a site. And
I don't know
then,
how you could sell it
Yeah, I don't see
that way.
that.
okay, well, those are things to discuss, I think.
We should pick a site and see how it lands. I mean, we can pick a site as a commission.
Recommend one
Pardon
to
me?
the selectmen, yeah.
Right.
Of course, Gordon's here all the time, so he's in on what we're up to and can give us feedback about where we're headed. But, yeah, no, I think that might be a good thought, as a recommendation for
Yeah.
a site. And then once we have that, we have a better take on what the range of the costs would
Mhm.
probably would be.
Okay. Thankfully, Don's still
So far, I've got Todd.
secretary, so
we
we're
get
gonna have,
clarity
we're gonna have some minutes on
for the
this
clarity for the
discussion,
Board of
because this is
Yeah.
pretty meaty stuff here.
And Dave recommending that we get a site
Mhm.
Yeah.
before we bring it to town.
I think we all
Is that correct?
know we need a site,
Yeah.
but that's,
Yeah, we shouldn't dodge that. We should,
Yeah.
make a
Yeah.
commitment on that.
okay. Community input. I went to the EDC today at the Union, which is my old pottery building. It's a very attractive space. It's all carpeted and
It's really beautiful.
hardly
in here.
recognizable.
Yeah.
But my understanding is it's been taken, or that space is being rented by the Hughes Library,
Correct.
and it's got a lease of some kind. And the plan is for it to be open quite a bit, particularly on the weekends. And Gordon brought up that it might be a good place to establish a setting where we'd have a location that we can show to the public what our work has been, have some documents there, maybe have a map on the wall.
I think
as the
that's
progress keeps going. It was brought up that maybe even a maquette at some point, if we get to that place where there's, so,
Yeah, because we could, there's just all kinds of opportunities now, going through Staples for making up really nice large format photography
yeah.
and
So I'll continue to try to make that happen, and it's a good central location, and central to the project as well. Any other comments on community input that anybody wants to throw in? Okay, we've now come to the public comment portion. Anybody from the public want to weigh in, have some discussions? Tom? Sure.
Can you get closer to the microphone up here, just a little?
Okay, one of my questions was, is the public comment portion recorded? I guess it is.
It is, oh yes, you're being recorded right now.
I'm sort of surprised to learn that there has been, I started coming to these meetings about 13 months ago, and my first couple of meetings there was rancorous debate, can I use that word? About where this project would be sited. I mean, this was the concern of the community. It was, it hit a nerve with people in West Cornwall, and it was the subject of continued discussion. So I'm surprised to learn tonight that that a decision was on the table to move ahead with this with an estimate of the cost and no site. And as your discussion progressed, it became clear that you share this concern, which makes me happy because there's a lot of emotional stuff going on in West Cornwall, and I think it's not helpful to what you're trying to accomplish. And I think that there are two things that you need to do. One is get on this site thing. I mean, I'm surprised that nothing has happened since I've been coming to meetings. And when Don comes home, I say, was there any discussion of where this might be located? And his answer is always, no, we didn't talk about that. So I'm glad that I'm hearing that you're going to start that. The other thing is that there seems to be no structure that enables you as a committee to get information to people in West Cornwall. The minutes go up. The minutes are posted on the web.
They're supposed
Joyce
to be.
posts them, or are they not?
I think they're
posted?
supposed to be. I don't know. I think they're supposed to be. Though.
They're
should
up,
figure that
they're up, they're not always current, but they do get there eventually.
Okay, well, I
don't know where
would
they're at.
encourage you to do something to make that more current, because
Some videos on the website.
the
Every
video's
video.
on the website, but people would rather go on and read something. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm here and I'm looking at the clock, so, people doing this on their computer have even less time than I budgeted for this tonight. So I don't think that's the way it's going to get out. I think that the union is a good idea, but if people have to go in there to get information about this, then that's an extra step, and it works against it. Anyway, but to go back to my first point, the siting is contentious, and I hope that in the coming meetings soon, that I'll be hearing more information about where you're looking and what you're finding. So, that's
Also,
my-
Tom, I think, in defense, I think once we get this exhibit sort of piece up, perhaps in the union, which probably will happen before the town meeting, I would hope, then people will have a place to go to see and meet each other and talk and,
Yeah, okay. They'll need to know that, though.
Oh, yeah, they will.
That won't just happen, that needs to be encouraged. Anyway.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Mark.
I had asked that this FDA application be made available to the public.
The USDA application?
Yes,
Yeah,
USDA.
be
Is that your plan?
made public. Before it goes in as an application or after it goes in?
As soon as possible. I mean, you evidently don't know what's in it. I think it would be very helpful for the people of Cornwall to know what
The hard
this
copy
entails. I mean,
at the town hall?
that guy Steve said that they're applying for $4.9 million, that this project is going to cost $4.9 million. That's a giant jump from the proposal to two years ago. So I think that the citizens need a lot more information. And I agree totally with Tom that you've got to give us more data about what your plans are. I mean,
Well-
just from listening to you tonight, it appears that you're like, you don't know what the hell is going to, you don't know where
I'm
it's gonna
surprised we're
go.
still
You
even
don't know
talking
if
about
It's
it.
going to go to the river, it's going to go in dirt, I mean, and a lot of people in West Cornwall are very concerned about this.
Yeah.
We want to know what's going on.
And we want you to
That
know.
report
We want you to know everything that's
was
going on.
60 pages long.
Mark, you understand, and
And now, we're going to spend $5 million, but we don't have a clue about where this thing is going to go, what the scope of it is going to be, what the technology is going to be. We don't know a damn thing.
Well, we're moving
well,
close.
we would like you to know all of this, And you do understand that you just brought up the $5 million. Do you understand what that figure is?
Well, I understand that that's an upper limit to the project.
Yeah, you understand that
And
now, but that does not relate to the actual number. So if you want to keep up on all the information, we want you to know all this. And hopefully, if we put something up in a public place, all these things will be spelled out. But if they're not spelled out and you have questions, come to the meetings, ask the individual members of the committee to explain things to you, because we have looked at a lot of the technology, we've looked at the costs, we're working to the maximum amount of our ability to control this thing to a certain price range and something that is going to be digestible by the community. And we want you to know all that, and if you feel like you don't know the answers, those things, we'd like you to have them.
I've seen my face at these meetings for like 3 years. I have read all of the proposals. I have followed all this closely. And my concerns are still the same. I don't know what's going on. And I hope that this USDA application will be made available to the public. I mean, the town spent $10,000 on it. It seems to me like the citizens ought to be able to look at it.
Yeah, well, believe me,
Absolutely.
I take that very seriously. I'm going to talk to this engineer and see in what fashion we can get it, disseminated.
I think, in defense, this is just as frustrating for us as it is for you. There seems there's just a very glacial process of moving from A to B to C and getting to the point where we can have a town meeting and get ready for some bonding and some money to come in with a description of what's going to happen. But, we're going to do the best we can to let you all know what's happening. That's paramount, I think, for this committee.
Anybody else want to talk? Judy?
Could you tell me which USDA program you're going through for this application? Is it rural development?
I don't know off the top of my head.
You can get back to me
Yeah, at some point.
at some point?
At some point, yes.
Well, Gordon, I think that was, a simple email or a phone call should be able to answer that.
Right. I'm not filing the application, so.
Could you tell me the name of the USDA rep that you've
Yeah,
been
Norman
working
St.
with?
James,
Say it again, please.
Norman St. Jean, who's,
St. Dean?
Jean.
Which
Jean.
he works out of the Norwich office. And he's in charge of the grants for Kent and Salisbury, and would be working on the one for this committee.
Could I trouble you to attach the environmental report to your minutes and any other documentation that you have or correspondence that never makes it into the packet of minutes? The people, the citizens, everything that you get that is deliberative or is a part of the project should go with your minutes and on the website so that it's available for all. That would be a great help.
Is that the final environmental one, or is this just a?
I don't think so, no. But,
Yeah.
it's obviously not the submitted one, because he hasn't submitted. It says prepared for, whether or not this is the one that gets submitted.
Is that the one that's $55,000? It costs $55,000, the original one?
No,
No,
that's this one.
environmental-
This is on the website.
That's
Yeah.
That's the November 2017.
would you also consider posting on the website the survey that went out to the residents of West Cornwall? So whatever letter went out or postcard, the body of that, and then,
I'll tell you, why don't you make a list, and then we'll get those into the union. We'll have those in resident at that space.
well, I just gave you my list. I can't give you the rest of the list because I don't know what you have that has not been put in the public domain.
Well,
Our problem is that Joyce
QBS?
is not Joyce will not post things to the website. And unless unless you, when I was the secretary, I would send the minutes to Laszlo or Richard or
Right.
Kara, and they would post it. And it's one of the things that maybe all of you will consider is that we need it's about time we had an official town website so that it was the responsibility of all the boards to get their minutes posted in a timely way and not make people not consider the posting of minutes satisfactory inside the town hall in the limited hours that it's open. I mean, we are either the one or one of two towns in the state of Connecticut that do not have official websites. I think it's about time.
Do you want to just add Laszlo or somebody to the list that the minutes goes to?
No,
Is that what
Laszlo's not doing it anymore.
Okay.
You can send it to Kara Weigel if you want to. Kara Weigel, I believe, is the person that would do it.
Yeah, but she's doing it for free, and I don't think that's right either. Todd, you have no.
And my only last comment is related to my continuing support to identify an in-ground system. And as the consumers, and you as the consumers representing us, it's up to you to tell the engineer that you've paid for that you want that engineer to find a site to put a system in the ground. The one that you're proposing, they don't make as much money on a system that's in the ground. So I'm not saying that he's not ethically sound around this. It's a difficult area, we all know that. But he makes a lot more money for the system that he's proposing, and it's a kind of slap it in, dig it, put it in there, and it's done, and he walks away. The upfront costs for an in-ground system are greater. The O&M costs are minuscule compared to what the town is going to be up against. And it's a chemically intensive system. We've gone through all of this. There are going to be very large underground tanks of chemicals that are going to be needed to clean, to backflush the system, to blow down the filters. The filters are fabulously expensive. And we don't know, many of the systems are coated with what's called PFAs or PFOAs. You might be familiar with that because of what's going on in the Farmington River. That happened with the spray of the fire suppression foam that was sprayed at Bradley Airport during the plane crash, and it got into the Farmington River and massively contaminated the river. It's the new generation of Teflons. And most of these new alternative septic systems all of their components are coated with this new Teflon. And they shed and they migrate. And they're not regulated yet. And so, you think that this is such a pristine dump in the river scenario. It's really not. It's really not. He talks a lot about renovated water. Yes, renovated water as it relates to what the state and federal government currently have thresholds for and identify. So there's plenty of chemicals that are going to be going into the river from this system because the state doesn't regulate a lot of chemicals.
Right, okay.
So you tell the engineer that you want, no matter what, you want the engineer to find an in-ground space.
Well, I think Gordon spoke to that earlier, saying that we would try to make that happen, so.
I've spoken with engineers who are very familiar with West Cornwall, and I've told you this, and they see no problem with getting a system in down there. The last very important thing, Gordon, is that during the last session of the General Assembly, a bill was brought forward to currently the threshold that keeps you under the oversight of Torrington Area Health District is 7,500 gallons per day. Above that, you climb the regulatory ladder and you go into a DEEP general permit scenario. Very expensive, very esoteric. a lot of waiting time. So this bill was brought forward to increase the threshold to 10,000 gallons per day. It made it out of committee.
Wait, you just said 75,000 gallons
That
per
was
day.
7,500 gallons per day. The bill wanted to bump it up to 10,000 gallons per day. You know, Bonnie Brook is exclusively under Torrington Area Health because they come under that 7,500 gallons per day. So if you can get an in-ground system, keep it at below 10,000 gallons, you can stay under Torrington Area Health and be in a lot better shape than having an alternative system that's very chemically intensive.
Thank you.
Maybe we've written to Maria Horn, you might want to back it up. Do you want a copy of my letter to her?
Sure.
Anybody else? Marina?
Yeah, I was just going to quickly respond to the communication issue online. We actually did set a goal at our last Board of Selectmen meeting that was something we were going to explore. There are a variety of different channels we could approach, but my initial thought was having a subscriber-based newsletter. And that could be a vehicle for information from a board such as this. You know, to send out, okay, this is what we discussed, it's a blurb, it can summarize Richard's videos, which are great, but often people don't have time to watch them. So I think that that's something that I personally feel very strongly about, and hopefully we can get kicking pretty soon.
Good.
What does subscriber-based
Like
mean?
a MailChimp or a constant contact. So you can decide to opt into the newsletter if you want to receive it. If you don't want to receive it, you don't have to get it.
Gotcha.
And in my vision of this, you would have a big push at the forefront to go and let people know that, hey, this is what's going on. Here's how you sign up. It's really easy. And it's very different from the current Cornwall Forum, which is a Google group, which
Right.
is more like a conversation piece.
Yeah.
This would not be that. This would be from the Board of Selectmen, you know.
And would that satisfy the need for a town website, Joanne? Do you envision?
Well, I mean-
Is that something you envisage? Subscriber-based would be okay?
Well, I mean, you have I think it's a lovely idea, but I don't think it replaces the idea that, you know, the requirements.
I'm not speaking to that, but I'm happy to speak to you about that in the future.
Yeah,
I'm just speaking to the information flow right now, which is an
Absolutely.
easier thing to tackle than creating a whole website. That's like a very simple thing to establish while we discuss the bigger pictures. But I hear trends from different boards and then the population that comes to the meetings that they feel like they're not getting information. So I feel like that's something that is an easy fix, and hopefully we can, you know, do that in the short term and discuss the larger projects down the line.
Cool, great.
It's like our Economic Development Committee that's been reminded repeatedly to have minutes and doesn't have them.
They have
Does
trouble
anybody have
getting a secretary.
Kieran's personal, Karen Weigel's email? Or-
Yeah, I have it.
Weigel.
Oh, does somebody else have? Joanne, you have it?
Oh, okay.
Ready to adjourn?
Any other public comments? I think that brings us to the end. Somebody want to make a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
So, Ian, we did have a good conversation.
Thank you.